The transport ship Meridian hummed through the void between stars, carrying a mixed crew of species toward the neutral station Kepler-7. In the ship's common area, various aliens mingled awkwardly, their different biologies creating an odd symphony of clicks, hisses, and electronic translations. Marcus Chen sat quietly in the corner, his weathered hands wrapped around a cup of synthetic coffee. The Navy SEAL kept to himself, observing the other passengers with the careful attention that had kept him alive through 3 tours in hostile territories. His plain civilian clothes couldn't hide the way he moved or the alertness in his dark eyes. Across the room, a group of Galactic Coalition soldiers dominated the space. They were Kraxi, a warrior species that stood nearly 8 feet tall with chitinous exoskeletons and 4 powerful arms. Their leader, Commander Vextar, wore the purple insignia of an elite unit. His mandibles clicked with amusement as he recounted tales of crushing rebellion on distant worlds. The humans think they're warriors. Vextar's translator rendered his words in cold, mechanical tones. Soft creatures who need machines to fight their battles. We conquered 7 systems while they were still learning to make fire. His squad laughed, a harsh sound like breaking glass. The other passengers shifted uncomfortably, but Marcus remained still, his expression unchanged. He'd heard worse from better. A young human woman nearby, Dr. Sarah Kim, looked distressed at the casual discussion of conquest. She was heading to Kepler-7 to establish a medical research facility, part of humanity's peaceful expansion into Coalition space. The Kraxi noticed her discomfort and Vextar's eyes fixed on her with predatory interest. "Look at this one," he said, rising from his seat, trembling like prey. "This is what Earth sends to represent them in the galaxy? Weak scientists and bureaucrats?" Marcus felt his jaw tighten, but he remained seated. He wasn't here to start an interstellar incident. The Coalition had strict policies about violence aboard civilian transports, and humans were still newcomers trying to prove they belonged among the stars. Vextar approached Dr. Kim, towering over her. "Perhaps you need to understand your place in the new order, little human. Your species exists at our sufferance." The transport's other passengers watched nervously. A few alien civilians looked sympathetic but unwilling to intervene. The Kraxi were known for their hair-triggered tempers and overwhelming strength. Even other Coalition species gave them wide berth. "Please," Dr. Kim said quietly, "I don't want any trouble." "Trouble?" Vextar's mandibles spread wide in what might have been a grin. "We are simply educating you about reality. Humans are not warriors. You are farmers and merchants, useful for labor but nothing more." Marcus set down his coffee cup with deliberate care. The small ceramic click seemed loud in the sudden silence. He stood slowly, his movements fluid and controlled. "Excuse me," he said politely, "but the lady asked you to leave her alone." Vextar turned, his forearms flexing. Up close, the Kraxi was even more imposing, his exoskeleton gleaming under the ship's lights. His compound eyes focused on Marcus with predatory attention. "And who are you to speak, soft thing? Another weak human who thinks words can stop a warrior?" Marcus smiled, an expression that didn't reach his eyes. "Just someone who believes in good manners." The Kraxi soldiers moved closer, forming a loose circle. Passengers began edging away, sensing the tension. The transport's automated systems noted the gathering but took no action unless actual violence occurred. "Good manners," Vextar repeated, his translator making the words sound mocking. "Perhaps I should teach you about Kraxi manners. When a superior speaks, inferiors listen in silence." Without warning, Vextar's primary right arm swept toward Marcus's face in a casual backhand slap. It was meant to be dismissive, a gesture of contempt rather than a serious attack. The Kraxi expected the human to crumple, perhaps lose consciousness from the casual blow. Marcus moved. His left hand came up in a smooth arc, catching Vextar's massive wrist. His right hand struck simultaneously, fingers extended in a precise, spear-hand thrust that found the joint between chitinous plates at the alien's elbow. The Kraxi's arm snapped with a sound like breaking branches. Before Vextar could even process what had happened, Marcus stepped forward into the alien's guard. His elbow drove upward into the soft tissue beneath the Kraxi's mandibles, while his other hand found a pressure point at the base of the creature's skull. Vextar's eyes widened in shock and pain, but Marcus wasn't finished. He pivoted on his heel, using the alien's own mass against him. His hands found purchase on the Kraxi's head, one cupping the back of the skull, the other gripping under the jaw. The movement was swift, precise, and utterly without hesitation. Marcus had identified the weak point in Vexitar's anatomy within seconds of seeing him move. The Craxy's chitinous armor was impressive, but like all armor, it had gaps and joints. Marcus twisted sharply, applying pressure with surgical precision. The crack echoed through the common area like a gunshot. Vexitar's body went limp and crashed to the deck with a thunderous impact that shook the floor plating. The massive alien lay motionless, his compound eyes staring sightlessly at the ceiling. The entire encounter had lasted less than 5 seconds. The common area erupted into chaos. Alien voices raised in shock, fear, and disbelief. The other Craxy soldiers backed away, their own compound eyes wide with something that looked remarkably like terror. They had never seen their commander defeated so quickly, so completely. Marcus straightened his civilian jacket and looked down at the body without emotion. He had killed before many times, but always in service to his country and his fellow soldiers. This time was no different. The alien had threatened an innocent woman and shown clear intent to escalate to violence. Dr. Kim stared in shock, her hands covering her mouth. She had known Marcus was former military. His bearing made it obvious. But she hadn't expected this level of lethality. "Someone should notify the ship's security," Marcus said calmly, his voice cutting through the babble. "There's been an incident." The transport's automated systems were already responding, security drones deploying from hidden alcoves. But they moved slowly, still processing what their sensors had recorded. The death had happened so quickly that even the ship's advanced monitoring systems had barely tracked it. As the initial shock began to wear off, the real implications started to sink in. A human had just killed a Craxy elite soldier in single combat, in front of dozens of witnesses. Word would spread through the coalition faster than light itself. Humanity had just announced itself to the galaxy in a way that no diplomatic overture could match. The security drones hovered around Marcus like metallic wasps, their scanners painting him with invisible beams of energy. The ship's chief security officer, a methodical Altarian named Zefki, arrived within minutes, his scaled features betraying no emotion as he surveyed the scene. "Explain what occurred here," Zefki commanded, his voice carrying the authority of coalition law. Marcus stood calmly beside Vexitar's body, his hands visible and non-threatening. "Commander Vexitar attempted to assault Dr. Kim. When I intervened, he attacked me. I defended myself." The remaining Craxy soldiers bristled at this characterization. "Lies!" hissed Sub-Commander Grektol, Vexitar's second-in-command. "The human murdered our commander in cold blood. This is an act of war against the Craxy Empire." Zefki's primary eyes studied the body while his secondary eyes kept watch on the assembled witnesses. The ship's sensors recorded the entire incident. "We will review the data before making any determinations." Dr. Kim stepped forward, her voice shaking but determined. "The human is telling the truth. Commander Vexitar was threatening me, and when Mr. Chen tried to help, the alien struck first." Several other witnesses murmured agreement, though many of the non-human passengers seemed reluctant to speak against the Craxy. The warrior species had a reputation for holding grudges across generations. Grektol's mandibles clicked dangerously. What do the words of prey matter? The human killed a coalition officer. The punishment for such a crime is death. Actually, Zefki said slowly, accessing his legal database through neural link, Article 347 of the Coalition Transportation Code clearly states that passengers have the right to defend themselves and others against unprovoked assault. If the sensor data confirms witness testimony, this was justified self-defense. The revelation sent a ripple of surprise through the crowd. Few species in the galaxy had laws protecting individual rights to the extent that the Coalition had adopted in its charter. Most societies operated under strict hierarchical systems, where the strong dominated the weak. While Zefki reviewed the sensor data, word of the incident spread throughout the ship via the passenger communication network. By the time they reached Kepler 7 station, the story had taken on a life of its own. A human had killed a Craxy elite soldier barehanded in less than 5 seconds. The details grew more dramatic with each telling. Marcus found himself confined to his quarters under protective custody, not as a prisoner, but because 3 more Craxy soldiers had tried to challenge him in the corridors. Each time, security had intervened before violence could erupt, but the tension was escalating rapidly. Dr. Kim visited him that evening, bringing real coffee from her personal supplies. "I wanted to thank you," she said, settling into the small cabin's only chair. "And to apologize for getting you into this situation." Marcus shook his head. "You didn't get me into anything. I chose to act. The other passengers are calling you the human predator now. Some of them are terrified of you." "Good," Marcus replied quietly. "Maybe they'll think twice before threatening innocent people." Sarah studied his face, trying to understand the man who had saved her. "You're not what I expected when I heard you were military. You seem so normal." Marcus almost smiled at that. "What did you expect? Someone who foamed at the mouth and carried around a collection of alien skulls?" "Maybe something like that," she admitted. "The way you moved, the way you finished it. That wasn't normal combat training." "No," Marcus agreed. "It wasn't." Before she could ask more questions, the cabin's communication system chimed. Zefki's voice filled the small space. "Mr. Chen, please report to Security Bay 7. We have completed our investigation." The security bay was crowded when Marcus arrived. Representatives from a dozen different species had gathered, including Ambassador Telvanni, the Altarian diplomat who served as the ship's senior coalition representative. Grektal and his remaining soldiers stood at attention, their compound eyes fixed on Marcus with barely contained hatred. After reviewing all sensor data and witness testimony, Zefki announced formally, "I have determined that Marcus Chen acted in lawful self-defense against an unprovoked assault. No charges will be filed." The Craxi erupted in angry chittering, but Ambassador Telvanni raised a scaled hand for silence. "However," she continued, "this incident has created a significant diplomatic situation. The Craxi High Command is demanding satisfaction for the death of Commander Vextar." Grektal stepped forward, his forearms spread wide. "The human may hide behind coalition laws, but Craxi honor demands blood for blood. I invoke the right of challenge. Single combat to settle this matter." Marcus felt a familiar calm settle over him. He'd been expecting this. The Craxi were a warrior culture that viewed any backing down as weakness. They couldn't let the death of one of their elite soldiers go unanswered without losing face among the other species. "The right of challenge is recognized under coalition law," Ambassador Telvanni said reluctantly. "However, it requires mutual consent from both parties. Mr. Chen, you are under no obligation to accept." "What happens if I refuse?" Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "The matter would be referred to the Coalition High Council for arbitration. However, the Craxi government has indicated they would consider refusal an admission of guilt and an insult to their honor, which meant diplomatic relations between humanity and the Craxi Empire would be poisoned for generations. Earth was still negotiating for full membership in the coalition, and making enemies of one of the most militarily powerful species would be catastrophic for humanity's future among the stars." Marcus looked at Grektal, sizing up his opponent. The sub-commander was younger than Vextar had been, but larger and clearly in peak physical condition. His exoskeleton bore the scars of many battles, and his movements suggested extensive combat training. "I accept the challenge," Marcus said simply. The announcement sparked immediate chaos. Dr. Kim pushed forward from the crowd of onlookers. "You can't! He's twice your size and has 4 arms." "The combat will take place on Kepler 7 station," Ambassador Telvanni announced. "Standard challenge rules apply. No weapons, no armor. Fight continues until death or surrender. The station's medical facility will provide emergency care for the survivor." Grektal's mandibles spread in a predatory grin. "I will tear you apart slowly, human. Your death will serve as a lesson to your entire species about challenging Craxi superiority." Marcus met the alien's compound eyes without flinching. "We'll see." As the crowd dispersed, Dr. Kim grabbed Marcus's arm. "This is insane. You got lucky with the first one." He wasn't expecting resistance. "But this alien knows you're dangerous now. He'll be ready for you." Marcus gently removed her hand from his arm. "Sarah, I appreciate your concern, but this isn't about luck. It's about training, preparation, and understanding your enemy. What if you lose? What if you die?" Marcus was quiet for a moment, thinking about the implications. If he lost, humanity would be seen as weak by the rest of the galaxy. Earth's chances of joining the coalition would suffer. and humans would be viewed as prey by aggressive species like the Kraxi. Then hopefully someone else will pick up where I left off, he said finally, but as Marcus returned to his quarters to prepare for what might be his final battle. He had no intention of losing. The Kraxi had made a fundamental error in their assessment of humanity. They saw physical weakness and assumed mental weakness as well. They were about to learn just how dangerous that mistake could be. Kepler 7 station hung in the void like a massive metallic flower, its rotating sections creating artificial gravity for the thousands of beings who called it home. As the transport docked, news of the impending challenge had already spread throughout the stations. Communication networks. Marcus walked through the docking tube with the calm demeanor of a man going to a business meeting rather than a fight to the death. Behind him, Dr. Kim struggled to keep up, her medical bag clutched tightly in her hands. "I've been researching Kraxi anatomy," she said breathlessly. "Their exoskeleton is incredibly tough, but there are vulnerable spots at the joints and under the mandibles. Their primary weakness is that their nervous system is more distributed than ours. They can function even with significant damage to their brain equivalent." Marcus nodded, though he'd already identified most of these factors during his first encounter with Vextar. "What about their reaction time?" "Faster than humans in simple responses, but they have trouble with complex decision-making under stress. Their warrior culture emphasizes direct confrontation over tactical thinking." This was useful information. Marcus had spent years learning to exploit his enemies' psychological weaknesses as much as their physical ones. The Kraxi's cultural emphasis on honor and direct combat could be used against them. The station's central plaza had been converted into an impromptu arena. Hundreds of aliens from dozens of species had gathered to watch the challenge, many of them having placed substantial bets on the outcome. The odds heavily favored Grektal, unsurprisingly, since most of the galaxy still viewed humans as physically inferior. Station Administrator Loktar, an elderly Centaurian whose tentacles had turned silver with age, served as the official moderator. "By ancient right and coalition law," he announced, "this challenge will determine the fate of the conflict between these two individuals. The rules are simple. No weapons, no outside interference. Combat continues until death or surrender." Grektal emerged from the crowd of Kraxi supporters, his exoskeleton polished to a mirror shine. He had removed his military uniform, revealing the full extent of his impressive physique. Forearms ending in razor-sharp claws flexed as he moved, and his compound eyes tracked Marcus's every movement. "Today the galaxy learns that humans are prey," Grektal announced loudly. "I will break you slowly, soft creature, so that all may witness your species' weakness." Marcus removed his jacket and rolled up his sleeves, his movements deliberate and unhurried. The contrast between the two fighters was stark. The massive, armored alien and the relatively small human in simple clothes. "Fighters, take your positions," Loktar commanded. The two combatants faced each other across 20 feet of open space. Marcus could feel the weight of hundreds of alien eyes upon him, representing dozens of species who would carry word of this fight to every corner of the galaxy. This wasn't just about personal honor anymore. It was about humanity's future among the stars. "Begin," Loktar announced. Grektal immediately charged forward. All four arms spread wide to prevent Marcus from dodging to either side. His strategy was simple. Use his superior reach and strength to pin down the human, then tear him apart with his claws. Marcus waited until the last possible second before moving. Instead of dodging left or right as Grektal expected, he dropped low and rolled forward, passing beneath the alien's outstretched arms. As he came up behind the Kraxi, his elbow struck precisely at the joint, connecting Grektal's left rear arm to his torso. The alien spun with surprising speed, his right arm sweeping toward Marcus in deadly arcs. But Marcus was no longer there, having flowed away like water the moment his strike connected. Grektal's movements were becoming more erratic, frustration creeping into his attacks. The Kraxi were used to enemies who met their strength with strength, who tried to match their reach with weapons or technology. Marcus's fluid, evasive style was completely outside their experience. "Stand still and fight," Grektal roared, his translator rendering the words as an electronic snarl. Marcus smiled grimly. "I am fighting." The human began to press his attack, no longer content to simply evade. His hands moved like striking snakes, finding the gaps in Grektol's armor with surgical precision. Each blow targeted specific nerve clusters and joint connections that Dr. Kim's research had identified. The Craxy's left rear arm hung useless now, damaged nerves preventing proper control. Green ichor leaked from several small wounds where Marcus's strikes had penetrated the gaps in the exoskeleton. But Grektol was far from finished. His species could absorb tremendous damage and keep fighting. The alien changed tactics, abandoning his wide, sweeping attacks for more focused strikes. His claws whistled through the air inches from Marcus's face as the human weaved between them. One lucky hit would end the fight immediately. Marcus caught Grektol's right primary arm at the wrist, using the alien's own momentum to redirect the clawed hand past his shoulder. At the same time, he drove his knee upward into the soft tissue at the base of Grektol's neck. The Craxy staggered, his breathing becoming labored. But instead of retreating, he grabbed Marcus with his remaining functional arms, pulling the human against his chest in a crushing bear hug. This was what Grektol had been waiting for. Close contact where his superior size and strength would be decisive. His arms tightened like a vice, and Marcus felt his ribs creak under the pressure. But Marcus had been expecting this as well. The moment Grektol committed to the grapple, the human drove both thumbs deep into the nerve clusters beneath the alien's mandibles. His fingers found purchase on either side of Grektol's neck, pressing against specific points that Dr. Kim's anatomy lessons had identified as critical. Grektol's eyes widened as paralysis began spreading from Marcus's touch points. The Craxy nervous system, for all its distributed redundancy, still relied on specific pathways to coordinate movement. Marcus had learned to disrupt those pathways. Impossible, Grektol whispered as his arms began to lose their grip. Not impossible, Marcus replied quietly, just unexpected. With his opponent's arms weakening, Marcus shifted his grip to get better leverage. His training had taught him dozens of ways to kill or incapacitate an enemy quickly and quietly. The specific technique he chose now was one he'd learned during a classified mission in hostile territory. A method designed to drop an opponent silently without alerting nearby enemies. Marcus's hands found the precise points at the base of Grektol's skull where the alien's spinal equivalent connected to his brain cluster. The pressure he applied was calculated and exact, designed to disrupt nerve function without causing immediately fatal damage. Grektol's compound eyes rolled back as consciousness fled. His massive body went limp, and Marcus had to step back quickly to avoid being crushed as the alien collapsed to the deck plating. The plaza fell silent except for the hum of the station's life support systems. Hundreds of alien spectators stared in shock at the fallen Craxy warrior. Many had never seen one of the galaxy's elite soldiers defeated in single combat, especially not by a member of a species they considered inferior. Dr. Kim rushed forward with her medical equipment, scanning Grektol's vital signs. "He's alive," she announced, "but he'll be unconscious for hours. The nerve disruption you caused will take time to heal." Marcus straightened his clothes and looked around at the stunned crowd. Many of the aliens were backing away from him now, their body language suggesting fear rather than contempt. The casual way he had dismantled two Craxy warriors was forcing them to reassess their assumptions about humanity. Station Administrator Loktar approached cautiously. "The challenge is concluded. Marcus Chen of Earth is declared the victor." The announcement sparked immediate chaos as various factions began arguing about the implications. Some called for the Craxy to honor the result and end their dispute with humanity. Others suggested that the outcome proved humans were too dangerous to be allowed into the coalition. But Marcus wasn't paying attention to the political maneuvering. He was watching the remaining Craxy soldiers as they gathered around their fallen comrade. Their compound eyes kept flicking between Grektol's unconscious form and Marcus himself, and he could see the uncertainty in their movements. For the first time in their military careers, the Craxy were looking at another species with something approaching respect rather than contempt. The implications of that shift would ripple outward from this station to every corner of the galaxy. Humanity had just announced itself as a force to be reckoned with. Within hours of the challenge's conclusion, subspace communications carried news of Marcus's victory to every major world in the coalition. The story grew with each transmission. A lone human had defeated two of the galaxy's most feared warriors, using nothing but his bare hands and superior technique. Marcus found himself confined to a diplomatic suite aboard the station, not as a prisoner but as a person of significant political importance. 3 different species had already requested formal audiences, while the Craxi delegation had locked themselves in their quarters and refused all communication. Dr. Kim brought him dinner from the station's human-friendly restaurant, one of the few establishments that served food compatible with Earth biology. The news feeds are calling you everything from the human warrior to the Deathbringer, she said, settling into a chair across from his small dining table. Marcus cut his synthetic steak with deliberate precision. I'm not any of those things. I'm a soldier who did his job. The galaxy doesn't see it that way. There's a betting pool running on whether you're some kind of genetically enhanced super soldier, or if all humans possess hidden combat abilities. This made Marcus pause mid-bite. That could be dangerous. If other species think all humans are like me, they might decide we're too much of a threat. Sarah leaned forward, her expression serious. Or they might decide we're too valuable as allies to ignore. The Vegan Trade Confederation has already sent a preliminary inquiry about hiring human security contractors. Before Marcus could respond, the suite's door chimed. A holographic display showed Ambassador Telvanni waiting in the corridor, accompanied by 2 beings Marcus didn't recognize. Mr. Chen, the Altarian diplomat said as she entered, I'd like you to meet High Counselor Zaraketh of the Andromedian Republic and General Thexmore of the Coalition Defense Force. Zaraketh was a graceful being whose translucent skin revealed the flow of luminescent blood beneath. Her species was known for their diplomatic skills and their ability to see probability streams extending into the future. General Thexmore was a massive Ursarian, his bear-like features scarred from decades of military service. Mr. Chen, Zaraketh spoke in musical tones that her translator rendered as precise, formal language. Your actions today have created ripples that extend far beyond this station. We need to discuss the implications for your species' application to join the coalition. Marcus gestured for them to sit, though he remained standing, a habit from military briefings. I assume my fighting 2 Craxi warriors has complicated things politically. General Thexmore's growl was translated as a laugh. Complicated? Son, you've just turned the entire galactic military doctrine on its head. For the past 3 centuries, the Craxi have been considered the premier individual fighters in known space. Their warrior culture has dominated coalition military thinking. Now we have reports that a single human defeated 2 of their elite soldiers using techniques none of our combat specialists recognize, Zaraketh added. The other species are demanding to know if this represents typical human capabilities. Marcus considered his words carefully. I'm not typical. I've had specialized training that most humans don't receive, but the potential exists in most of my species. We're adaptable, persistent, and creative in our approach to problems. Demonstrate, General Thexmore said bluntly. Sir, show us what makes human combat doctrine different. My security chief is waiting outside. He's a Kavari warrior trained from childhood in 17 different martial arts. If you're willing to spar with him, we can evaluate human techniques firsthand. Marcus looked at Dr. Kim, who shook her head emphatically. You've already fought twice in one day. Your body needs recovery time. This wouldn't be a fight to the death, Ambassador Telvanni assured them. Merely a demonstration of techniques. First blood or submission ends the match. The request wasn't really a request. Marcus could see the political necessity behind it. The coalition leadership needed to understand what they were dealing with before they could make informed decisions about humanity's future. Very well, he agreed. The station's main gymnasium had been hastily converted into an observation area. Word had spread despite attempts at secrecy, and representatives from a dozen species crowded the viewing gallery. The Kavari security chief, Mordex, was already warming up when Marcus arrived. The Kavari were reptilian beings known for their speed and flexibility. Mordex stood about 6.5 feet tall, his scales shifting color from green to blue as he moved. His species had developed their martial arts over millennia, emphasizing flowing movements and pressure point techniques. I have studied recordings of your previous encounters, Mordex said, his forked tongue tasting the air. Your style is unknown to me, but I will not underestimate you as the Craxi did. Marcus nodded respectfully. I appreciate that. You're a professional. This should be interesting. General Thexmore served as referee, laying out the rules clearly. First blood, submission, or loss of consciousness ends the match. No permanently damaging techniques. This is about understanding capabilities, not creating casualties. The two fighters circled each other warily. Mordex moved with fluid grace, his scaled hands weaving hypnotic patterns that Marcus recognized as both defensive postures and psychological warfare. The Kavari fighting style was designed to confuse and misdirect opponents. Marcus adopted a more static stance, his feet planted shoulder-width apart, hands raised in a basic defensive position. To the alien observers, he looked almost primitive compared to Mordex's elaborate movements. The Kavari struck first, his arm extending in a lightning-fast thrust aimed at Marcus's throat. But instead of the rigid, predictable movement the alien expected, Marcus's entire body flowed around the attack like water flowing around a stone. Mordex's second strike came from an impossible angle as he spun his flexible spine in ways no mammalian species could match. His clawed hands swept toward Marcus's ribs in a move that should have been unavoidable. Marcus caught the strike on his forearm, but instead of blocking it directly, he guided the force past his body while stepping forward into Mordex's guard. His elbow drove toward the Kavari's solar plexus with textbook precision. Mordex twisted away at the last second, his reptilian flexibility saving him from serious damage. But Marcus was already adjusting, his free hand reaching for the nerve cluster at the base of the alien's neck. The Kavari warrior realized his danger and attempted to disengage, but Marcus had closed the distance too effectively. What followed was less of a fight than a lesson in the difference between tournament martial arts and battlefield techniques. Every move Marcus made served multiple purposes. An apparent attack would also set up a grapple, while a defensive motion would position him for a counterstrike. His technique was ruthlessly efficient, wasting no energy on impressive displays. Within 30 seconds, Marcus had Mordex face down on the gymnasium floor with one arm twisted behind his back and pressure applied to a nerve cluster that left the alien temporarily paralyzed. "Submit," Marcus said quietly. "I submit," Mordex gasped. Marcus immediately released the hold and helped the Kavari to his feet. "You're very skilled," he said genuinely. "Your flexibility nearly got you out of several positions that would have stopped most opponents." The gymnasium was silent except for the whispered conversations in a dozen alien languages. General Thexmore approached with a thoughtful expression. "That was educational," the Ursarian general said. "Your technique prioritizes efficiency over form. Most species develop martial arts as cultural expressions, art forms that happen to be useful in combat. Your style appears designed purely for ending fights quickly." Marcus nodded. "Human military doctrine emphasizes practical results over tradition. We study our enemy's capabilities and develop techniques specifically to counter them." Zaraketh stepped forward, her skin patterns shifting in ways that suggested deep thought. "The probability streams are becoming clearer. Humanity's approach to combat is fundamentally different from established galactic norms. You don't fight to demonstrate superiority. You fight to win." "That's about right," Marcus agreed. High Counselor Zaraketh exchanged meaningful looks with General Thexmore before turning back to Marcus. "Mr. Chen, I believe it's time we had a serious discussion about your species' military potential and how it might benefit the Coalition." As they walked toward a private conference room, Marcus caught Dr. Kim's eye. She looked worried, and he understood why. Humanity had just demonstrated that they could be valuable military allies. But in the galaxy's complex political landscape, being seen as too valuable could be just as dangerous as being seen as too weak. The real test was just beginning. The private conference room was shielded against all forms of electronic surveillance, its walls lined with quantum dampening fields that prevented any information from leaving the space. High Counselor Zaraketh activated additional privacy protocols before settling into her chair, her translucent skin pulsing with patterns that indicated serious concern. "Mr. Chen," she began, "what I'm about to share with you is classified at the highest levels of coalition government. Your demonstration today has accelerated certain decisions that were already under consideration." General Thexmore pulled up a holographic display, showing a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Red markers indicated areas of conflict, and Marcus was surprised to see how many there were. The Coalition appeared far less stable than Earth's diplomats had been led to believe. For the past 50 years, we've been dealing with an increasing threat from the Void Syndicate. the general explained. They're a collection of rogue species that rejected coalition membership and have been steadily expanding their territory through conquest. The hologram zoomed in on a section of the galaxy where entire star systems were marked in pulsing red. Their military doctrine is based on overwhelming force and terror tactics. They've developed weapons and strategies that our traditional approaches cannot effectively counter. Ambassador Telvanni leaned forward. The Syndicate's latest offensive has captured 12 coalition worlds in the past 6 months. Our military forces, trained in conventional warfare, have proven inadequate against their guerrilla tactics and psychological warfare. Marcus studied the tactical display, his trained eye picking out patterns in the enemy advances. They're avoiding direct confrontation with your main fleet concentrations and focusing on isolated targets. Classic asymmetric warfare. Precisely, General Thexmore growled. And our military leaders, raised in cultures that value honor in battle, struggle to adapt to such dishonorable tactics. Zaraketh's skin patterns shifted to deeper hues. This is where humanity becomes relevant to our strategic planning. Your species' history is filled with examples of asymmetric warfare, unconventional tactics, and adaptation to superior enemies. Your people have turned disadvantage into victory countless times. Marcus began to understand where this conversation was heading. You want human military advisors? More than that, the High Counselor replied. We want to establish a formal military exchange program. Coalition officers would train with human forces to learn your tactical flexibility, while human officers would gain experience with galactic-scale warfare. The implications were staggering. Such a program would fast-track humanity's integration into galactic civilization while positioning Earth as a crucial military partner rather than a junior member seeking admission. There are complications, Ambassador Telvanni warned. Several species, particularly the Craxi, are already expressing concern about human military capabilities. If we move too quickly, we risk creating a coalition of species opposed to human membership. General Thexmore snorted. After today's demonstrations, anyone opposing human membership would have to be a fool. Your combat techniques could revolutionize our special forces capabilities. Marcus held up a hand. With respect, General, I think you may be overestimating what I represent. Yes, human special forces are highly effective, but we're not superhuman. Our advantages come from training, tactics, and technology. All things that can be learned and countered given time. But time is what we lack, Zaraketh said urgently. The Void Syndicate is planning a major offensive within 6 months. Intelligence suggests they intend to strike at the Coalition's core worlds, including several founding member systems. We need new tactical approaches immediately. The room fell silent as the weight of the revelation settled in. Marcus realized he was being asked to make a decision that would affect not just his own future, but potentially the course of galactic history. What exactly are you proposing? He asked. General Thexmore manipulated the holographic display to show a new section of space near Coalition territory. We want to establish a joint training facility at Nexus Station. Human military personnel would work with Coalition forces to develop new tactical doctrines specifically designed to counter Syndicate strategies. You would be given the rank of Strategic Advisor, Zaraketh added, with authority to observe and modify Coalition military training programs. Your government would be invited to send a full military mission to oversee the exchange program. Marcus considered the offer carefully. It represented an incredible opportunity for humanity, but also enormous risks. What happens if the program fails? If human tactics prove ineffective against the Syndicate? Then the Coalition falls, Ambassador Telvanni said bluntly. The mathematical projections are clear. Without significant tactical innovation, we cannot stop the Syndicate's expansion. They will overwhelm our defenses through sheer persistence and willingness to accept casualties. The door chimed softly, and Dr. Kim entered after being cleared by security. I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's been a development. The Craxi delegation is requesting an immediate meeting with Mr. Chen. General Thexmore's expression darkened. What do they want now? According to their message, they wish to formally request Mr. Chen's assistance in training their own special forces. They're offering to withdraw their opposition to human coalition membership in exchange for exclusive access to human combat techniques. The implications were immediately clear to everyone in the room. The Craxi were attempting to secure human military knowledge for themselves while potentially denying it to the rest of the coalition Zaraketh's skin patterns shifted to what Marcus was learning to recognize as anger. They're trying to manipulate the situation to their advantage. If they gain exclusive access to human techniques, they could use that knowledge to dominate other coalition species. It's actually a smart move, Marcus admitted. They recognize that their current military doctrine is being challenged, so they want to adapt and maintain their position as the coalition's primary military force. You can't seriously be considering their offer, Dr. Kim said, her voice tight with concern. Marcus shook his head. I'm not considering it. But I understand their thinking. The Craxi have built their entire identity around being superior warriors. Seeing that superiority challenge threatens their position in the galactic hierarchy. General Thexmore leaned back in his chair. What do you recommend we do about their request? Marcus thought for a moment, then smiled grimly. We use it to our advantage. Invite the Craxi to participate in the joint training program. Let them learn human tactics alongside everyone else, but make it clear that cooperation is required. That's risky, Ambassador Telvanni warned. The Craxi don't cooperate well with other species. Their culture values individual achievement over teamwork. Then they'll learn to adapt or they'll fail, Marcus replied. That's how evolution works, whether biological or tactical. Species that can't adapt to changing circumstances get left behind. Zaraketh's patterns shifted to what might have been amusement. You would use their own competitive nature to force them into cooperation? Exactly. Frame it as a challenge rather than a request. Tell them that human tactics are too complex for species that can't work as part of a team. Their pride will force them to prove otherwise. The room was quiet for several minutes as the alien leaders considered this approach. Finally, General Thexmore began to chuckle, a sound like distant thunder. It's audacious enough that it might actually work. The Craxi would see refusing the challenge as an admission of weakness. High Counselor Zaraketh nodded slowly. Very well. We'll proceed with the joint training program and extend participation to all coalition species, including the Craxi. Mr. Chen, do I have your agreement to serve as strategic advisor? Marcus looked at Dr. Kim, who nodded encouragingly despite her obvious concerns. You have my agreement pending approval from my government, but I have one condition. What condition? Zaraketh asked. The program has to be genuinely cooperative. No species gets preferential treatment and all innovations are shared equally. If we're going to change galactic military doctrine, we do it together or not at all. Ambassador Telvanni smiled, her scaled features showing approval. That may be the most human response possible, insisting on fairness even when you hold the superior position. As the meeting concluded and plans began taking shape, Marcus reflected on how quickly his simple mission to escort Dr. Kim had evolved into something that could reshape the galaxy's balance of power. Humanity was about to step onto the galactic stage not as supplicants seeking membership, but as partners bringing unique capabilities to the table. The real challenge would be proving that human tactics could work on a galactic scale. 3 months later, Nexus Station hummed with activity as the most ambitious military training program in galactic history took shape. The massive structure, originally built as a diplomatic neutral zone, had been rapidly converted into a combined military academy and tactical research facility. Marcus stood in the central command center, watching displays that showed training exercises happening simultaneously across dozens of different environments. Human instructors worked alongside coalition officers, while mixed species teams practiced scenarios designed to counter Void Syndicate tactics. Report from Training Bay 7, announced Lieutenant Sarah Chen. Dr. Kim had accepted a commission to oversee the program's medical and scientific aspects. The Kavari Human Joint Unit successfully completed the urban warfare simulation in 47 minutes, beating the previous record by 15 minutes. Training Bay 12? Marcus asked, reviewing data streams from multiple exercises. Craxi Altarian team is struggling with the stealth infiltration exercise. The Craxi keep trying to solve problems through direct confrontation, rather than working around obstacles. Marcus nodded, unsurprised. 3 months of intensive training had revealed both the potential and the limitations of cross-species military cooperation. Some combinations worked brilliantly. Human tactical flexibility complemented Kavari speed and Altarian precision beautifully. Others, particularly involving the more aggressive species, required constant adjustment. Sir, called Communications Officer Vexnai, a young Altarian whose scales showed patterns of excitement. Incoming priority transmission from Coalition Central Command. The main display shifted to show Admiral Korthval, the Coalition's supreme military commander. The elderly Centaurian's tentacles moved in patterns that Marcus had learned indicated severe stress. Strategic Advisor Chen, we have a critical situation developing. The Void Syndicate has launched their anticipated offensive, but it's not following any of our projected patterns. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. What are they doing differently, Admiral? Instead of attacking our outer defenses as expected, they've launched simultaneous strikes against 3 core Coalition worlds. Intelligence suggests they've been planning this for years, using sleeper agents and infiltrated systems to bypass our early warning networks. The tactical implications were immediately clear. The Syndicate had adopted human-style asymmetric warfare, striking at the Coalition's center of power, rather than grinding through peripheral defenses. It was exactly the kind of bold, unconventional strategy that traditional galactic military doctrine was unprepared to handle. What's the current status of the attacked systems? Marcus asked. Vegan Prime has gone dark completely. Altair Command is under siege but holding. Centauri Station is reporting massive civilian casualties and requesting immediate evacuation support. Lieutenant Chen stepped forward. Sir, what about our training program? Should we suspend operations and deploy our mixed units to assist? Marcus considered the options carefully. The joint training program had produced impressive results, but the mixed units were still experimental. Throwing them into actual combat might be premature and could result in catastrophic losses. Admiral, what assets do you have available for immediate deployment? The Fifth Fleet is mobilizing, but they won't reach the affected systems for at least 4 days. The Craxi battle group is closer but refuses to operate under Coalition command structure. They insist on independent action. This was exactly the kind of coordination failure that human military doctrine was designed to avoid. Marcus made his decision. Admiral, I'm requesting permission to deploy our experimental units to provide tactical support. Not as frontline combat forces, but as special operations teams to assist with evacuation, intelligence gathering, and disruption of Syndicate operations. Admiral Korthval's tentacles writhed with uncertainty. Strategic Advisor, these units are untested in real combat conditions. The political consequences of failure could be catastrophic. With respect, Admiral, the political consequences of losing 3 core worlds would be worse. Our mixed units are specifically trained for the kind of operations needed in this situation. Before the Admiral could respond, another voice cut into the transmission. The Craxi Empire agrees with the humans' assessment. The display split to show General Grektol, fully recovered from his defeat by Marcus and now serving as the Craxi representative to the joint program. His relationship with Marcus had evolved from hatred to grudging respect to something approaching professional admiration. Our battle group will coordinate with the mixed units, Grektol continued. The human tactical approaches have proven effective in our training exercises. Admiral Korthval looked surprised. The Craxi rarely agreed to coordinate with anyone, let alone follow the recommendations of a human officer. Very well, the Admiral decided. Strategic Advisor Chen, you have authorization to deploy your experimental units. May the ancestors watch over you all. As the transmission ended, Marcus turned to address the assembled officers from a dozen different species. All right, people, this is what we've been preparing for. I want Team Alpha deployed to Altair Command for defensive support. Team Beta will attempt infiltration of Vegan Prime to gather intelligence and assist any surviving resistance. Team Gamma will coordinate with civilian evacuation efforts at Centauri Station. The next few hours were a controlled explosion of activity as the joint teams prepared for actual combat deployment. Marcus found himself constantly impressed by how well the different species had learned to work together when their individual strengths were properly leveraged. The Craxi provided raw strength and courage, while humans contributed tactical flexibility and technological innovation. Altarians offered precision and analytical capabilities, while Kavari's speed and stealth proved invaluable for reconnaissance missions. As the mixed units departed Nexus Station aboard fast insertion craft, Marcus remained behind to coordinate overall operations from the command center. Real-time data streams from the combat zones began flowing in, painting a picture of the Syndicate's capabilities that was both enlightening and disturbing. Sir, Lieutenant Chen called out. Team Alpha is reporting strange readings from the Altair system. The Syndicate appears to be using some kind of technology that disrupts standard coalition communications and sensors. Marcus studied the incoming data, his tactical training identifying patterns that the aliens missed. They're using electronic warfare techniques, jamming, signal interception, false data injection. It's psychological warfare as much as technological. They're trying to blind us and make us doubt our own information. General Thexmore, who had arrived from Coalition headquarters to observe the operations, growled his approval. Human insight proves valuable again. Our forces were interpreting the communication disruption as equipment failure rather than enemy action. Team Beta is reporting successful insertion at Vegan Prime. Communications Officer Vexnai announced. They've made contact with resistance forces and are coordinating guerrilla operations against Syndicate occupation troops. The success of the initial deployments was encouraging, but Marcus knew the real test was yet to come. The Void Syndicate had clearly studied Coalition military doctrine and developed strategies specifically designed to counter it. The question was whether the human-influenced tactical innovations would prove sufficient to turn the tide. Incoming transmission from the Craxi battle group, Vexnai reported. General Grechtal is requesting permission to implement Human Protocol 7 in coordination with Team Alpha's operations. Marcus smiled grimly. Protocol 7 was a particularly audacious tactic that involved using apparent retreat to lure enemies into prepared ambush positions. It required precise timing and coordination between multiple unit types, exactly the kind of tactical complexity that traditional Craxi doctrine avoided. Permission granted. Tell General Grechtal to execute at his discretion. As the battle reports continued flowing in, Marcus began to see a larger pattern emerging. The mixed human-alien units were performing better than expected, their diverse capabilities allowing them to adapt to Syndicate tactics in ways that homogeneous coalition forces could not. But more importantly, the Syndicate forces themselves seemed confused by the new tactical approaches they were facing. Their strategies had been designed to counter predictable coalition responses, not the fluid, adaptive techniques that human military doctrine emphasized. Sir, Lieutenant Chen said quietly, early indicators suggest our forces are gaining momentum in all three theaters. The Syndicate appears to be struggling to adapt to our new tactics. Marcus nodded but remained cautious. Military victories could turn into disasters with frightening speed, especially when facing an adaptable enemy. Keep monitoring all channels. The Syndicate didn't get this far by being inflexible. They'll adjust their approach soon enough. As if summoned by his words, alarms began sounding throughout the command center. The display screens filled with new tactical data that made Marcus's blood run cold. The Void Syndicate was deploying weapons that the Coalition had never seen before. The tactical displays showed something that should have been impossible. Entire Coalition fleet formations were simply vanishing from sensor readings, not destroyed but apparently erased from existence itself. The Void Syndicate had deployed weapons that operated on principles unknown to galactic science. Strategic Advisor Admiral Korthval's voice carried through the emergency channel, barely controlled panic evident despite the translation software's neutral tone. We're facing complete tactical breakdown. The Syndicate's new weapons are eliminating our forces faster than we can track. Marcus studied the incoming data streams, his mind racing through possibilities. The pattern of disappearances was too precise to be random, too systematic to be purely destructive. Admiral, are you getting any debris readings from the vanished ships? Any energy signatures that might indicate what happened to them? Negative. One moment our vessels are there, the next they simply aren't. It's as if they were never built. From across the command center, General Thexmore's voice cut through the chaos. Team Alpha is reporting similar phenomena at Altair Command. Ground installations are disappearing without warning. The mixed units are requesting new orders. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, forcing himself to think beyond conventional tactical frameworks. The Syndicate's new weapons defied known physics, which meant traditional countermeasures would be useless. But every weapon system, no matter how advanced, had limitations and vulnerabilities. Lieutenant Chen, pull up everything we know about Syndicate technology development over the past decade. Focus on any research that seemed inconsistent with their established capabilities. Already on it, sir, she replied. her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. There are references to something called Project Nullification in captured documents from 6 months ago. But the details were heavily encrypted. Vexnai, get me direct communication with Team Beta on Vegan Prime. If anyone has access to current Syndicate research data, it would be their occupation forces. The communication took several tense minutes to establish, routed through multiple relay stations to avoid Syndicate detection. When Team Beta's leader, a joint human Kavari operative designation Serpent 7, finally appeared on screen, his scaled features showed signs of stress. Command, the situation here is deteriorating rapidly. The Syndicate forces are preparing some kind of massive installation at the planet's research complex. Whatever they're building, it's drawing power from the entire planetary grid. Marcus felt pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. Serpent 7, can you get visual confirmation on this installation? Any details about its construction or purpose? Affirmative, sir. Transmitting tactical reconnaissance data now. The images that appeared on the main display were unlike anything in Coalition databases. The Syndicate had constructed a massive crystalline structure that pulsed with energy patterns that hurt to look at directly. More disturbing was the area around it. Reality itself seemed unstable, with objects flickering in and out of existence. My God, Lieutenant Chen whispered. They're manipulating dimensional boundaries. Marcus's tactical training kicked in as he analyzed the implications. It's not a weapon in the traditional sense. They're creating localized reality distortions that erase anything caught within them. The ships aren't being destroyed. They're being removed from existence entirely. General Thexmore approached the command station, his expression grim. If that's accurate, then conventional military responses are useless. How do you fight an enemy that can simply erase you from reality? The same way humans have always fought superior enemies, Marcus replied. We find the weakness they don't know they have. He manipulated the tactical displays to overlay energy readings from all 3 combat zones. The pattern that emerged was subtle but consistent. The Syndicate's reality distortion weapons required enormous amounts of power and had limited range. More importantly, they seemed to affect only artificial constructs, not living beings. Serpent 7, are you reading any effects on biological matter near the installation? Negative, sir. The Syndicate personnel seem unaffected, and local wildlife is undisturbed. The distortions only target manufactured objects. Marcus turned to address the assembled officers. The weapon has limitations. It can erase artificial constructs but not living matter. That gives us an exploitable weakness. Admiral Korthaval's voice crackled through the emergency channel. Strategic advisor, what are you proposing? We can't fight starships with bare hands. No, but we can fight them with biological components. Lieutenant Chen, what do you know about biotech integration programs? Several coalition species have experimented with living ship designs. The Kavari have been developing organic armor systems, and the Altarians have created bio-neural computer networks. None of them are combat-ready, though. Marcus smiled grimly. They don't need to be combat-ready. They just need to be alive. General Thexmore, how quickly can we retrofit our remaining forces with biological components? It would take weeks, months even. We don't have that kind of time. Then we improvise. Serpent 7, can your team infiltrate that research complex and gather detailed intelligence on the weapon system? Affirmative, sir. The Syndicate security is focused on external threats, not infiltration. Give us 6 hours. As Team Beta began their infiltration mission, Marcus coordinated with Coalition research facilities to develop rapid deployment biological countermeasures. It was desperate improvisation, but human military history was filled with examples of improvised solutions defeating superior technology. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Kim, monitoring the medical aspects of the mixed unit operations, noticed that Kavari bioarmor naturally resisted the Syndicate's scanning systems. Their organic technology was sufficiently different from standard Coalition manufacturing to avoid detection. If we can coat our ships and equipment with Kavari bioarmor compounds, they might survive the reality distortions, she suggested. Within hours, emergency production facilities were synthesizing bioarmor compounds for rapid application to Coalition forces. It was a desperate gamble, but Marcus had learned that desperate gambles often succeeded when conventional tactics failed. Team Beta's infiltration of the Vegan Prime research complex provided the crucial intelligence they needed. The Syndicate's dimensional weapons required precise targeting data to function effectively. Disrupt their sensor networks and the weapons became nearly useless. All units, new tactical protocol. Marcus broadcast across all combat zones. Priority targets are Syndicate sensor arrays and communication networks. Secondary targets are power distribution systems feeding their dimensional weapons. Tertiary targets are the weapons themselves. The tide of battle began to turn as coalition forces implemented the new strategy. Ships coated with bioarmor compounds survived direct hits from dimensional weapons, while targeted strikes on Syndicate infrastructure degraded their ability to coordinate their exotic technology. General Grektal's voice came through the command channel, carrying unmistakable satisfaction. Human tactical analysis proves correct once again. Craxi Battle Group has successfully destroyed 3 Syndicate sensor clusters. Their dimensional weapons are firing blind. Over the following hours, the combined human coalition forces systematically dismantled the Syndicate's technological advantage. Without their reality-distorting weapons, Syndicate forces proved vulnerable to conventional tactics enhanced by human strategic thinking. The final confirmation of victory came from Team Alpha at Altair Command. All Syndicate forces have withdrawn from the system. Dimensional weapon installation has been captured intact for Coalition study. Marcus leaned back in his command chair, exhaustion finally setting in. The crisis had lasted less than 18 hours, but it had fundamentally changed the galactic balance of power. The Coalition had faced an existential threat and emerged stronger, thanks to the integration of human tactical thinking with alien capabilities. Admiral Korthval's final transmission carried genuine gratitude. Strategic Advisor Chen, the Coalition owes humanity a debt that cannot be easily repaid. Your species has proven itself not just as worthy allies, but as essential partners in our continued survival. As the command center began returning to normal operations, Lieutenant Chen approached Marcus with a data pad. Sir, preliminary casualty reports are coming in. Thanks to the new tactics, losses were less than 5% of projected figures. The mixed units performed beyond all expectations. Marcus nodded, but his mind was already turning to the future implications. The Syndicate will adapt to our new approaches just like we adapted to theirs. This war is far from over. But humanity has proven its place in the galaxy, General Thexmore added, joining the conversation. No species will question your right to full Coalition membership after today. Marcus looked out through the observation windows at the stars beyond, thinking about the long journey that had brought him from a simple escort mission to this moment. A single confrontation with Craxi bullies had escalated into humanity's introduction to galactic warfare. The galaxy is bigger than any one species, he said finally, but maybe that's what makes cooperation so powerful. When different strengths combine, they create something greater than the sum of their parts. As news of the victory spread,